Growing up in a post-apocalyptic world means learning how to survive before even learning how to live. But for Ellie, survival has never been the only challenge. Born amidst the ashes of a fallen humanity, this young girl with the gift, or the curse, of immunity became the symbol of a hope that no one truly wanted to protect. From a rebellious orphan in Boston to an adopted daughter in the arms of Joel, and finally transforming into an unstoppable machine of vengeance among the ruins of Seattle. Today, we trace her entire story from the very beginning to the end. To understand Ellie's mind, we must erase the image of the ruthless hunter she will become as an adult and go back to Boston. We must look at a 14-year-old girl who has never known the old world. Her mother, Anna, is nothing more than a letter written in a hurry before dying. Growing up under the authoritarian regime of Fedra means only one thing: you are a number. But psychology teaches us that an adolescent deprived of affection and points of reference develops two things: an armor of cynicism and a desperate search for belonging. Ellie hides her vulnerability behind swear words, the cheesy jokes from her joke book, and a rebellious attitude. It is her way of telling the world, "You can't hurt me because I don't care about anything." But the truth is, she does care. Very much so. And that need for belonging materializes in Riley. Riley is her anchor, her first true connection to love and friendship. In the abandoned mall of Left Behind, for a few hours, Ellie stops surviving and starts living. She experiences the lightheartedness that has always been denied to her. But in the world of The Last of Us, happiness is a luxury that comes at a heavy price. And the price, for Ellie, is devastating. The bite of the infected changes everything, not only because it reveals her immunity, but because it destroys her mind. Riley dies, Ellie survives. On a psychological level, this is the exact moment when the greatest monster Ellie will carry inside her for the rest of her life is born: survivor's guilt. Why me and not her? Why do I get to breathe while the person I loved rotted in the dark? Here, Ellie stops considering her own life as something precious for herself. Her existence becomes a debt to be paid to the dead. Her immunity is not a blessing. It becomes a psychological condemnation. Ellie convinces herself that her only value in the world is to die to give meaning to Riley's death. And it is with this immense void in her heart, and with the conviction of being nothing more than a bargaining chip for the salvation of humanity, that Ellie is handed over to a cynical, weary man broken by grief. A man named Joel. When Ellie meets Joel, she finds a hollowed-out man, a smuggler who turned off his emotions 20 years prior, the day he lost his daughter, Sarah. For Joel, Ellie is not a person. She is the cargo, a package to be delivered to the Fireflies in exchange for weapons. And from a psychological perspective, the beginning of their relationship is a clash between two different coping strategies for trauma. Joel defends himself through total detachment. He doesn't want to know Ellie's name. He doesn't want to hear her questions. He doesn't want to form bonds, because he knows that in their world, bonding with someone means exposing yourself to intolerable suffering. Ellie, on the other side, defends herself with aggression and hyperactivity because she is scared to death of being abandoned again. She has just lost Riley, and the idea of being left alone with that terrifying secret on her arm destabilizes her. Serving as a temporary glue between these two opposite worlds is Tess, strong, pragmatic, the only person Joel truly trusts. But the journey is abruptly cut short at the Boston City Hall. Tess is bitten. This is the first real turning point of their journey, a moment that leaves a deep scar in Ellie's mind. Tess, looking at the young girl's immune arm, realizes that her death can have meaning, and before sacrificing herself to slow down the Fedra soldiers, she screams an order to Joel that will change everyone's destiny: "Take her to Tommy." Let's look at the scene through Ellie's eyes. She is 14. She saw Riley die, and now she sees Tess die because of her, to protect her. On a psychological level, Tess's sacrifice acts as a devastating amplifier on Ellie's survivor's guilt. An architectural toxic idea roots itself even deeper in her head. People die so that I can walk. Her very existence begins to seem like an injustice to those who didn't make it. For Joel, Tess's death is a wound reopening, the ghost of loss returning to haunt him. He wants to drop everything, but he gave his word. Now Joel and Ellie are left alone. They don't trust each other, they don't like each other, and they are surrounded by a world that wants to kill them. But right there, in the midst of that shared grief and the heavy silence that envelops them as they leave Boston behind, the first invisible cornerstone of the most important bond in Ellie's life begins to be laid. To obtain a car and continue the journey, Joel takes Ellie to Lincoln, Bill's fortress town. But for Ellie, meeting Bill is like looking into a distorted mirror that shows her a terrifying future. Bill is the living representation of what happens if you allow paranoia and loneliness to consume you. He is a man who cut off every human bond for fear of suffering, coming to consider people as dead weight. Ellie understands this immediately and, on a psychological level, rejects it fiercely. Sparks fly between the two right away. Ellie is not intimidated. She matches Bill's insults blow for blow, and she even steals a magazine and comic books from him. It is her way of reclaiming her humanity and her youth in front of a man who has surrendered both. Yet, when they leave the town after discovering the suicidal body of Frank, Bill's partner, the survivalist's cynical words hang suspended in the air. Bonds just get you killed. Ellie feels that weight. She looks at Joel and wonders if she, too, will become that kind of burden. The answer to that doubt arrives shortly after. Among the ruins of Pittsburgh, the recovered car is destroyed in an ambush, and after several altercations, the situation escalates. Joel is attacked by a hunter. He is on the ground, pinned, about to drown and die right before Ellie's eyes. In that millisecond, something snaps in Ellie's head and has a gun in her hand, a gun Joel had forbidden her from using. But there is no time to think. Ellie shoots. She doesn't hit an infected, she hits a human being. She protects the man who had defined her as just a cargo. Joel's immediate reaction, however, is incredibly harsh. Instead of thanking her, he gets angry, reprimands her for not obeying, and snatches the weapon from her hand. On a psychological level, this rejection is a tremendous blow to Ellie. She feels hurt and betrayed, but Joel's anger is not true anger toward her. It is the panic of a father realizing that the purity of that young girl has been violated because of him, that the world forced her to dirty her hands with blood to save his life. It takes some time, but Joel realizes the hypocrisy of his behavior. He understands that Ellie is no longer just an object to protect, but a partner, someone who actively chose to keep him alive. When Joel backtracks, apologizes, and officially hands her a pistol, a fundamental psychological transition occurs for both. Joel accepts that Ellie is part of his world, and that he is dragging her along with him. Ellie, for her part, for the first time since Riley's death, no longer feels like a burden or a bargaining chip. She feels useful. She feels, finally, like a team. On the journey out west, Joel and Ellie cross paths with two other survivors, Henry and his 10-year-old little brother, Sam. For Ellie, meeting Sam is a breath of fresh air in a desert of violence. Finally, she has someone her own age to talk to, joke with, and play with. With Sam, Ellie can temporarily shed the armor of the survivor and go back to being simply a young girl. But Sam's closeness also causes her psychological defenses to crumble, bringing her deepest demons to the surface. The night before the tragedy, in a dark room, the two children confide in each other. Sam asks her if she is afraid of the infected, and Ellie's response is one of the most intimate and revealing confessions of her entire story. Ellie looks at him and says, "I'm scared of ending up alone." On a psychological level, this phrase is the key to decoding Ellie's entire existence. She is not afraid of death, she is not afraid of physical pain or the monsters that populate the outside. Her greatest phobia is isolation. It is the terror that everyone she bonds with will end up dying or abandoning her, leaving her alone in the void. Ellie is projecting her greatest vulnerability onto Sam without knowing that destiny is about to strike her right there where it hurts the most. The next morning, the nightmare materializes. Sam was bitten the night before, in secret, and turned during the night. When Ellie goes to wake him up, she finds a monster with the face of her only friend attacking her. The situation escalates in a few seconds of pure terror. Joel tries to grab his gun to save Ellie, but Henry, blinded by brotherly love and desperation, stops him at gunpoint. Then, in a reflex driven by the instinct to protect, Henry turns and fires. He kills his brother Sam. The silence that follows the gunshot is chilling. Henry realizes in an instant the horror of what he has done. He spent his life protecting Sam, and now he has killed him. Consumed by an instantaneous and unbearable grief, Henry turns the weapon on himself and takes his own life, right before Ellie's eyes. This event destroys a piece of Ellie's soul. Not only does she lose Sam, but she witnesses the total collapse of a family. Psychologically, Henry's suicide is the brutal confirmation of what Bill had predicted. Loving someone in this world leads you to madness and death. And it is here that we see a change in Ellie's behavior. She becomes quieter, more somber, because the pain is becoming too heavy to process, and the only way Ellie has to keep from losing her mind is to begin closing off that heart she had found the courage to open just a few hours prior. The journey brings Joel and Ellie to the hydroelectric dam managed by Tommy, Joel's brother. For the first time in months, Ellie sees a real, civilized, safe community, but this apparent oasis of peace quickly becomes the stage for the deepest crisis of their relationship. Everything falls apart when the dam is suddenly attacked by bandits. In the chaos of the fight, amidst smoke and gunfire, Joel and Ellie are separated. For the first time since the start of their journey, Ellie finds herself alone in hostile territory, not knowing if Joel is alive or dead. On a psychological level, this temporary separation triggers a full-blown existential panic attack in her. That fear of ending up alone, which she had confessed to Sam just days before, materializes in all its violence. When the two reunite, Ellie is shaken, but the worst is yet to come. Ellie discovers that Joel is planning to abandon her. Terrified by the idea of losing her, just as he lost his daughter Sarah 20 years earlier, Joel decides to pass the cargo to his brother Tommy, deeming him more fit to take her to the Fireflies. For Ellie, this is the confirmation of her worst nightmare. She doesn't care about the safety of a protected community. To her, being left there means that the man she learned to trust is rejecting her. Feeling betrayed and hurt to her core, Ellie steals a horse and runs away, taking refuge in an abandoned ranch house not far away. When Joel and Tommy track her down to a bedroom on the upper floor, the air is thick with an unbearable tension. It is here that we witness the most powerful and psychologically devastating dialogue of the entire first part of the journey. Joel walks in trying to play the tough guy, telling her that Tommy will protect her better. But Ellie isn't having it. She screams all her frustration at him.
Everyone I have cared for has either died or left me. Everyone fucking except for you.
With a disarming emotional maturity, Ellie puts Joel face to face with his own ghosts. When Joel, stung to the quick, responds brutally by bringing up his daughter. "You're right. You're not my daughter, and I sure as hell ain't your dad." Ellie doesn't back down. She tells him she is sorry about Sarah, but that she has lost people too, and that the idea of being dumped onto someone else only makes her feel more alone. On a psychological level, in that ranch house, Ellie is offering Joel her total vulnerability. She is accepting the risk of suffering just to not lose her bond with him. She is asking him to stop running from the past. On the way back, when the moment to separate arrives, Joel changes his mind. He looks at Ellie, accepts her fears, and decides not to let her go. This is the moment their relationship changes forever. They are no longer a smuggler and a piece of cargo. By choosing to stay together, Joel and Ellie have just redefined the concept of family in a world that has lost every shred of humanity. At the Colorado campus, the journey comes to a dramatic halt. Joel is gravely wounded by a metal pipe that pierces his abdomen. He is suspended between life and death. Here, the roles abruptly reverse. Ellie is no longer the girl to be protected, but the sole guardian of Joel's life. In the heart of a merciless winter, she takes care of him, treats his wounds, and risks everything just to find medicine. It is during this time of total vulnerability that Ellie is captured by David, the leader of a community of cannibals. While Ellie fights against a psychopathic predator trying to break her, Joel awakens from the delirium of his fever. The fear of losing Ellie transforms him into a demon. He tortures and kills anyone who stands between him and the girl. In that moment, Joel fully realizes that Ellie is no longer a moral duty. She is his very life. But Joel arrives late. Ellie has already saved herself, and the price to pay was her own soul. In a kitchen engulfed in flames, Ellie lunges at David, striking him with a blind, desperate, infinite ferocity. When Joel grabs her to pull her away, holding her close and calling her my baby girl, Ellie is in shock. That act of extreme violence has erased the last glimmer of her childhood innocence. On a psychological level, something inside her has broken forever. Ellie looked absolute evil in the eye and, to survive, she had to become just as ruthless. Joel holds her tight, aware that although he managed to save her body, Ellie's mind has just entered a dark territory from which she can never return. The journey concludes in Salt Lake City at the Firefly Hospital, but the atmosphere is not one of triumph. Ellie is distant, quiet, still visibly traumatized by what happened with David. Her mind is projected toward the end. She is convinced that once handed over to the doctors, all the accumulated pain will finally find a purpose. But the medical truth strikes like a bolt from the blue. The fungus in Ellie's head has mutated, which is why she is immune. To extract it and create a vaccine, the surgeons must open her brain. Under anesthesia, Ellie doesn't know that the operation will kill her. Joel's choice is immediate and ruthless. He cannot accept losing another daughter. In a mad race against time, Joel commits a massacre inside the hospital, killing doctors and soldiers just to tear Ellie away from the operating table. He makes an egoistic but deeply human choice. He prefers to condemn the world rather than lose her. When Ellie wakes up in the car, Joel feeds her the lie that will change their destiny forever. He tells her that the Fireflies found dozens of other immune people, that they failed to manufacture a vaccine, and that they stopped looking for a cure. On a psychological level, this lie is a silent poison. Joel tells it to protect her from the weight of knowing the world is doomed because of her. But for Ellie, it is a devastating blow. Her survivor's guilt, that debt she felt she owed to Riley, Tess, and Sam, is suddenly deprived of a purpose. If her immunity is good for nothing, then why did all those people die? Why is she still alive? Arriving at the gates of Jackson, Ellie decides to give Joel one last chance. She asks him to look her in the eye and swear that the story about the Fireflies is true. Joel looks at her and lies again. "I swear." Ellie responds with a simple, "Okay." But in that final look, the psychology of the character is shown in all its complexity. Ellie is not stupid. A part of her understands that Joel is lying, but in that moment, She decides to accept the lie. She decides to trust the only person who hasn't abandoned her, even though she feels that their bond now is built upon a terrible secret. The first chapter of Ellie's life closes here, with the salvation of her body, but with the beginning of an internal fracture that a few years later will lead her to a point of no return.